Traditional zombie apocalypse text, no system, no abilities, no golden fingers. Ordinary zombies survive in the apocalypse, and the zombies will mutate. Real zombie apocalypse is somewhat dark, and the male protagonist gradually grows, not the virgin. On the evening of September, the zombie virus suddenly struck City A. Living humans infected with zombie viruses have become bloodthirsty and cannibalistic monsters. Faced with a swarm of zombies rushing towards him, his son pushed his father, his husband blocked the knife with his wife, and his girlfriend invited her boyfriend to die in the face of great disasters. Human nature is often so ugly and ruthless. In this zombie-ravaging apocalypse, someone huddled together to keep warm and assist each other. Some people stay away from the living and fight alone. Some people abandon the bottom line and turn humans into beasts. Some people give up their dignity just to survive. Some people dominate one side by means of means. Someone took orders in the face of danger, trying to turn the tide. Someone else. This article is somewhat dark and realistic, so readers should carefully consider watching it. Chapter 1. Changes. You are listening at novelfull.audio. On the evening of September, the temperature remains hot. The sunset on the horizon has turned the surrounding sunset into a fiery red. 2 days ago, a virus with symptoms of high fever suddenly swept across the country. Under the spread of the virus, no one in the country was spared. Almost all of them were infected by one person, and the whole family lay in bed with a fever. But it's also strange to say that this virus comes and goes quickly. Fever patients infected with the virus simply lie in bed for 2 days, and their high fever symptoms will mysteriously subside. For a while, various domestic experts were also confused about the formation and appearance of the virus. We can only use climate reasons to deceive the public. The sudden outbreak of the high fever virus has just quietly ended. The children in the community, accompanied by their grandparents, came to the amusement park downstairs for fun. At noon, Gu Yuyao, who had just recovered from her high fever, also occupied the only swing on the amusement park with her brother's company. Just as Gu Yuchen was standing on the side of the swing, he looked down at the news on his phone about a patient attacking a doctor at a city hospital. Sitting on the swing beside her, Gu Yuyao's younger sister suddenly reached out and pointed to her brother Gu Yuchen outside the amusement park. "Brother, look. Grandpa Zhang from Building 3 seems to have drunk too much again." After hearing my sister's words, Gu Yuchen, who looked up from the mobile video, followed the direction pointed by his sister. Outside the amusement park, Grandpa Zhang, who lives in Building 3, is walking unsteadily towards the amusement park. After seeing Grandpa Zhang's drunken appearance, Gu Yuchen, holding a phone in his hand, immediately drew a smile on the corner of his mouth. It seems that there will be a good show to watch soon. Grandpa Zhang's wife, Grandma Wang, is a famous shrew in the community. Every time Grandpa Zhang gets drunk, it attracts a scolding from Grandma Wang. And Grandma Wang's voice is no less than the legendary roar of a lion from the east of the river. His various golden phrases when reprimanding his spouse are no less impressive than those of various comedians on the internet. Just as Grandpa Zhang was about to enter the amusement park, he was swaying 3 times. An old man holding his grandson and preparing to go home joked to Grandpa Zhang as he walked towards him. "Lao Zhang, how much did you drink today? I can't even stand steadily, why don't you hurry home? Be careful of your Wang Guifang." Before the old man who was holding his grandson in his arms could finish speaking, Grandpa Zhang walked towards the old man. Suddenly, there was a low roar from the mouth, as if it were a ghost. Roar. With Grandpa Zhang's strange roar. Grandpa Zhang, who was originally unstable on the road, threw the old man holding his grandson in front of him to the ground. After knocking down the old man holding his grandson in his arms, Grandpa Zhang, who was riding on the old man's body, opened his mouth and bit the old man's neck. The most pitiful is undoubtedly the grandson held in the arms of the elderly. The child followed his grandfather and was knocked down by Grandpa Zhang before he could even let out a faint cry from his mouth. In the blood spurting out from his grandfather's neck, Grandpa Zhang, who had swallowed the flesh in his mouth, bit into his tender white neck. The sudden change instantly frightened everyone on the amusement park. Time seemed to stand still for a few seconds at that moment. Continuing. A flustered shout immediately echoed around my ears. Killing. Call the police quickly. Hurry up. Someone's killing. Hurry up and help, save someone. The shouting was mixed with the sound of running and the cries of children around. As the chaotic cries rang out. On the amusement park, some rushed to rescue, some stood in the distance watching, some were busy comforting crying children, some were panicked and fled towards the distance, and Gu Yuchen, who pulled his sister off the swing, was also among these panicked escapees. The scene just now really scared Gu Yuchen a lot. He has never seen such a bloody scene in real life. If it weren't for what he saw with his own eyes, he really wouldn't believe it. The blood sprayed from the neck of a living person is really as exaggerated as in movies, like a fountain. And just as someone rushed over, trying to control Grandpa Zhang, who was hurting others. Gu Yuchen, who originally wanted to run over to help, suddenly realized. Grandpa Zhang, who was chewing on flesh and blood with his mouth wide open, his eyes were surprisingly blood red. I can't say why, but the words zombie flashed through Gu Yuchen's mind at that time. Gu Yuchen, who suddenly had an ominous feeling in his heart, didn't have time to think much. After pulling down the frightened sister Gu Yuyao from the swing, she hurriedly walked towards her own direction. Perhaps due to being frightened by the scene that just happened, Gu Yuyao, a 10-year-old sister, didn't say anything along the way. Just letting her brother Gu Yuchen take her little hand and walk forward quickly. Just as the siblings were about to reach the entrance of their own unit in Building 1. Gu Yuyao, the younger sister who had been dragged by her brother all the way, seemed to suddenly remember something from being startled. Hurriedly speaking to the brother who was holding onto his wrist. Brother, Daodu. Daodu, we haven't called it back yet. Daodu is a little teddy raised by her sister Gu Yuyao. When I accompanied my younger sister out to play today, the siblings also brought Daodu out together. Just before the incident, Dodo seemed to have run to the lawn near the amusement park for convenience. Gu Yuchen, who had no intention of caring about Daodu, quickly walked towards the unit door while pulling his sister. She said to her younger sister, who was constantly looking in the direction behind her. Don't worry about the beans, go home quickly. It had enough fun on its own, so it went home on its own. Speaking, Gu Yuchen grabbed his sister and walked into the unit door together. Gu Yuchen's home is located at 101 on the first floor of Building 1. It is also the only community supermarket in the entire community. The siblings had just entered the house, and the mother was alone at home looking at the shop. He stood outside the counter and said to Gu Yuchen in a slightly resentful tone. Is there someone like you who is your brother? How long has it been since I took your sister out and brought her back? You really can fool your sister. Without waiting for anyone to come along, Gu Yuchen hurriedly opened his mouth to explain the anti-theft door lock. On the road of the residential area in my backyard, a woman's scream immediately came from me. Ah! What are you doing? Someone! Help! The security guards in the community are going to kill. Due to Gu Yuchen's supermarket being located in his own living room. The wide French window in the living room just let the mother and son standing in the shop take a panoramic view of the road in the backyard community. On the road outside the window of the community, a middle-aged woman is being frantically bitten by 3 security guards inside the community who have fallen to the ground. The woman, who had not yet screamed in shock, finished her cries for help. The 3 security guards in the community each tore a bite of flesh and blood from the woman. Unexpectedly, in the process of competing for the flesh and blood on a woman's body, she tore her body into several pieces in an instant. Seeing a woman's limbs, she suddenly separated from her body. Colorful and trembling internal organs, pulled out from the body in the blood behind the scenes. The mother and son in the room were immediately frightened and froze on the spot. Looking out the window, 3 security guards each holding a large piece of flesh and blood from the woman, nibbling on it for a long time. Gu Yuchen's mother, whose face turned pale, suddenly spoke with a trembling voice, breaking the silence in the room first. Report. Report. Report quickly. Mobile phone. Where's my phone? Alarm, alarm quickly. Speaking. The mother, whose legs were trembling, hurriedly searched for the phone right in front of her on the nearby counter. After hearing my mother's words, Gu Yuchen, who was shocked, rushed to the window along the shelves on both sides and closed the curtains of the French window. The settings in zombie movies and games tell him that as long as the zombies don't discover them, they are currently safe. After ensuring one's own safety, immediately search for everything around you and the weapons that can be used for self-defense. Finally, it is patiently waiting for rescue. Of course, in the settings of movies and games, these so-called rescues simply do not exist. But this is the real world. He has reason to believe that with the advantage of weapons, the army can easily eliminate these zombies. Gu Yuchen, who drew the curtains, didn't have time to pay attention to his mother who had just found her phone and was busy reporting to the police. After taking a glance and being frightened by the scene outside the window, my younger sister stood still and dared not cry or move. She hurriedly rushed towards the miscellaneous room on one side. After entering the miscellaneous room, Gu Yuchen rummaged through the toolbox and found a hammer and a Phillips screwdriver. The settings in movies and games tell him that in the current situation, these 2 guys in hand are far more useful than the kitchen knives in his house. Just as Gu Yuchen, holding a hammer in his hand, stood in the miscellaneous room contemplating that the hammer in his hand should be able to crush the zombie's head in one fell swoop. In the living room, there came the sound of my mother speaking impatiently. Why is the line still busy? My mother's words have just finished. On the anti-theft door in the living room, there was a sound of scratching the door and the whimpering sound of my own little dog, Dodo. Woo-woo. Thinking about it, Gu Yuyao, who had just been frightened by a scene outside the window, had already recovered from the shock. The sound of beans outside the door has just sounded. Just as Gu Yuchen was about to leave the clutter room, he heard his sister in the living room, crying and reminding his mother. Mom, it's Dodo back. As Gu Yuchen, holding a hammer in his hand, walked out of the miscellaneous room. Just as he saw his mother, he dialed the phone in his hand. He reached out and opened the anti-theft door he had just locked. And at the moment the door opens, the 2 siblings who were hastily escaped from the amusement park before, and the little dog Dodo, who was abandoned outside. Then dragging a large section of the ground, the viscera flowing out of the abdomen crawled in through the open door. Chapter 2. Mom, I beg you. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Gu Yuchen's mother, who reached out to open the door, just opened a gap in the door. The little dog Dodo, who was sobbing outside the door, dragged a large piece of viscera flowing out of its abdomen onto the ground and entered the room through the crack in the door. As soon as she entered the room, her crimson eyes shone on Gu Yuchen's mother's calf, and she opened her mouth to take a bite. Ah! The mother, who was bitten by Dodo, just let out a scream from her mouth. The bean that bit on her calf shook its head violently and tore off a bone-deep flesh from her calf. Seeing this scene, Gu Yuyao, the younger sister, stood in the living room and shouted in panic. Dodo, that's Mom. With Gu Yuyao's words spoken. Tearing off a large piece of flesh and blood from his mother's leg, he left his injured mother in front of him. Turning around, dragging a large piece of internal organs under her body, she rushed towards her sister Gu Yuyao who was standing not far away. Just as he came out of the miscellaneous room, Gu Yuchen saw his mother bitten by Dodo. He saw Dodo pounce again at his younger sister in front of him. Hurriedly taking a step forward and reaching out, he pushed his sister standing in front of him to the side. While pushing his younger sister aside, Gu Yuchen's expression was panicked. With the hammer that was about to be clenched in his hand, he swung it towards Do, who was rushing towards him. When Do jumped up and made contact with the hammer in Gu Yuchen's hand in the air, a crisp sound of broken bones came from Do's neck. Click. With the sound of a broken bone, Do was hit hard by Gu Yuchen with a hammer. Immediately, it was knocked sideways and hit one side of the shelf. The beans that hit the shelf just fell to the ground. He tilted his already twisted neck and vigorously kicked his limbs, trying to stand up from the ground. And with a hammer swung out, Gu Yuchen's face had become somewhat terrifying. How could he give it a chance to stand up? Gu Yuchen, with a fierce expression, almost flew towards Do. Kneeling on the ground, he swung his hammer again towards the struggling Do head. Bang! Bang! Several times in a row, until Do's head was smashed and his eyeballs popped out, Gu Yuchen, who vigorously waved his hammer, finally stopped. Gu Yuchen, who smashed Do's dog head, didn't have time to reach out and wipe off the splattered dog blood on his face. Turning her head, she shouted to her younger sister Gu Yuyao, who was obviously scared by the scene before her again. Yuyao, don't be stunned. Hurry up and find some gauze to stop our mother's bleeding. After shouting these words, Gu Yuchen dropped the hammer in his hand. Then he crawled and arrived in front of his mother, who had already fallen by the door. Looking at my mother's right leg, bone can be seen deep, and there are constantly wounds with crimson blood gushing out. With tears in his eyes and a panicked tone, he spoke up and asked. Mom, how are you? Mom, are you okay? Speaking. Gu Yuchen, with a panicked expression, quickly took off his white T-shirt and was about to use it to stop bleeding on his mother's wound. After seeing her son's panicked expression, the mother allowed Gu Yuchen to stop the bleeding from the wound on her leg. As he raised his hand and gently stroked Gu Yuchen's tearful face, he spoke with a smile on his face. What are you panicking about? It's just a piece of meat bitten off by a dog. Mom has been living for 40 years, hasn't she never been bitten by a dog? I didn't even cry when my dog bit off my flesh. You, a young man of 20, why are you crying? No big deal, just go to the hospital later and get vaccinated against rabies. Isn't it that our family doesn't have money? Getting vaccinated is still affordable. After hearing my mother's words, Gu Yuchen hurriedly used a T-shirt to stop the bleeding from his mother's wound. I didn't say anything, just let tears slide down my face. He realized the appearance of zombies outside, but never expected that even animals would turn into zombies. What surprised him even more was that his mother would be bitten by Do, who had turned into a zombie. At this moment, he needs to remain calm, absolutely calm. He remembers a TV drama abroad. After a character was bitten by a zombie, his teammates helped him undergo amputation surgery. The most primitive amputation surgery ultimately saved the character's life and prevented him from contracting a virus and becoming a zombie. Perhaps this method will also be effective for one's own mother. After thinking about this, Gu Yuchen, who hurriedly stopped the blood from his mother's wound, looked in front of him with tears in his eyes. With a smile on her face, she raised her hand and gently stroked her face, choking up as she spoke. Mom, it's not as simple outside as we think. Mom, you have to trust me, I will definitely make you survive. Listen to me, I'm going to amputate you. I'm going to cut off your leg that was bitten by a bean. Although the process is painful. Gu Yuchen, with tears in his eyes, choked up and finished speaking. The mother, who had fallen in front of her, immediately looked at Gu Yuchen in disbelief and said in surprise. Yuchen, are you crazy? Do you know what you're talking about? You actually want to cut off your mother's leg? How could I have a son like you? My leg was just bitten by a dog. At this point, Gu Yuyao, holding a bandage in her hand, also heard what her brother Gu Yuchen had said. Hurry up and embrace the mother sitting on the ground. Looking at his brother Gu Yuchen kneeling on the ground in front of him, he shouted angrily. Brother is bad. I don't want you, bad brother, to cut off your mother's leg. I want to protect my mother. If you dare to touch her, I'll fight against you, this bad brother. Looking in front of them, the mother and sister, who had not yet noticed the seriousness of the situation. Gu Yuchen, whose face was covered in tears, immediately roared loudly. Am I crazy? Haven't you all noticed yet? The outside world has changed. Didn't you notice? Daodu was already dead when he came in. Is there any dog that can survive even when its internal organs are exposed outside the body? Those people who bite at living people outside have all turned into zombies. Which living person would eat people alive? Even just now, Daodu has turned into a zombie dog. After shouting out this sentence, Gu Yuchen, kneeling in front of his mother, shed tears. The mother, who was holding her younger sister in front of her, cried out in a pleading tone. Mom, I beg you, just believe me. You have been bitten by Daodu, and you have been infected with the zombie virus. If you don't cut off your leg, it won't be enough time. Mom, I beg you, I don't want you to become a zombie too, I don't want you to leave us. Mom. Speaking. Kneeling in front of his mother, Gu Yuchen suddenly knocked his head to the ground. With a loud bang, a bright red bloodstain appeared on the hard floor. In order to make my mother believe everything I said and agree to help her undergo amputation surgery as soon as possible. Gu Yuchen, who did not want his mother to become a zombie due to being infected with the zombie virus, could only gain his mother's trust by kowtowing. When Gu Yuchen, who was about to break his head on the ground, prepared to hit his second head hard towards the ground again. A warm and foul-smelling stream of black blood immediately sprayed onto his back. Gu Yuchen, whose second head had not yet been knocked off, quickly looked up at his mother in front of him when he saw the black blood splattering on the floor in front of him. At this point, Gu Yuyao, who saw her mother spewing black blood out of her mouth with her own eyes, immediately cried in panic and asked her mother beside her. Mom, what's wrong with you? Mom. A mouthful of black blood spurted out, and his face turned pale. My face and exposed skin are covered with veins. The mother, constantly rolling her eyes upwards, seemed to have realized something. After raising his hand, he forcefully pushed away his daughter Gu Yuyao, who was leaning against him. Rolling his eyes beside him, he struggled to speak to his son Gu Yuchen, who was kneeling in front of him. Rain. Rain Chen, mother's good son, come. It's too late. It's Mom. Mom misunderstood you. You must. Take good care of. Take good care of your sister. If Mom changes. Kill Mom, don't let Mom hurt you. At this point, the mother, whose eyes kept rolling upwards, suddenly showed a smile on her face full of veins. Looking up at the ceiling above, he struggled with a smile and said. Gu Tianming, after so many years, you. Finally, you are willing to come and see me. Let's take a look at our children. You've been away for 5 years, and our children have all grown up. Our son is very obedient, and our daughter is also very well behaved. Don't rush me. I still have something to say, to our daughter. After I finish speaking, I'll go with you. Speaking. A mother with veins all over her face and constantly rolling her eyes. He turned his head and looked towards his daughter Gu Yuyao, who had just been pushed aside and was sitting on the ground, only concerned about crying and feeling sad. Slowly open your mouth, as if wanting to say something. However, it was also at this moment. The mother, whose eyes kept rolling upwards, suddenly had bloodshot eyes and let out a wild beast-like roar from her mouth. Roar. With the roar of this roar, a mother with veins all over her face and congested eyes. Even as she flipped over towards her daughter sitting not far away, Gu Yuyao pounced vigorously. Chapter 3. Broken Home. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Gu Tianming, after so many years, you. Finally, you are willing to come and see me. Look at our children. You've been away for 5 years, and our children have also grown up. Our son is very obedient. Don't rush me. I still have something to say to. And to our daughter. After I finished speaking, looking in front of her, her face was bruised, her eyes kept rolling upwards, and she forcefully gazed at the ceiling above, squeezing out a smile on her face. Kneeling in front of his mother, Gu Yuchen suddenly felt an indescribable sense of powerlessness. He knew that his mother was already infected with the zombie virus at this time. No matter what he is doing, he is already powerless. Think about it, the mother at this moment is what the elderly call a comeback, right? In the final moments of life, I saw my deceased loved ones and returned to my own side. 5 years ago, with my father's unexpected death, my mother took on this family alone. All the hardships and difficulties were borne by the mother for their siblings. In the past 5 years, a strong mother has never, as soon as he thought about it, Gu Yuchen, who was kneeling in front of his mother, couldn't help but kneel on the ground and burst into tears. Mom! At this point, when the mother struggled to say the words she had just said, and then twisted her head towards Gu Yuyao, who was crying on the ground, she let out a roar from her mouth. Roar! After hearing his mother's roar, Gu Yuchen knelt on the ground and cried uncontrollably. He quickly looked up at his mother in front of him. As Gu Yuchen looked up, his mother, who had just seen her veins all over her face and her eyes bloodshot, turned over and rushed towards her sister Gu Yuyao, who was sitting not far away. Seeing this behind the scenes, Gu Yuchen, who was kneeling on the ground, didn't have time to think much. In a panic, he pounced forward and landed on his mother's lap, who was struggling to pounce on her sister beside him. After jumping onto my mother's lap, with tears on his face, Gu Yuchen tugged at his mother's legs and kept waving his arms towards his younger sister, trying to grab and bite her mother into his arms. Crying loudly at his completely zombie mother. Mom, that's my sister, that's my sister. Mom, don't. That's my sister. Gu Yuyao, who was suddenly attacked by her deceased mother, looked at her mother's fierce and terrifying face, and the hands constantly waving towards her. She was already frightened at a young age. With a frightened expression on his face, he crawled back several meters, maintaining a certain safe distance from his deceased mother. The deceased mother saw her daughter Gu Yuyao escape from her attack. Immediately struggling to turn over on the ground, he turned around and rushed towards his son Gu Yuchen, who was holding onto his legs. In the struggle of his mother, Gu Yuchen was pulled out of his arms by his mother. I was also surprised when I saw my mother turn over and rush towards me. In panic, Gu Yuchen, lying on the ground, lifted his legs and kicked towards his mother's abdomen as she rushed towards her. As Gu Yuchen's legs kicked against his mother's lower abdomen, his mother rushed towards him and was kicked directly onto the nearby wall. Gu Yuchen, whose mother had just fallen to the ground after hitting the wall with her back, knew that her mother had become a zombie. Then he took out the Phillips screwdriver he had found in the storage room from his pocket. He is well aware that at this moment, he must make a choice. For this broken home, for his sister. He must help his mother and quickly break free from the control of the zombie virus. When the mother fell to the ground and tried to struggle up, Gu Yuchen, who fell to the ground, immediately threw himself onto his mother's back. After pinning down his mother who was struggling to get up, it was already Gu Yuchen with tears streaming down his face. As he lifted the cross screwdriver tightly in his hand, he choked up and shouted. Mom, don't worry, I will definitely take care of my sister. Mom, I'm sorry. Speaking. Gu Yuchen raised a cross screwdriver high and immediately thrust it towards his mother, who was still struggling to get up, with a strong thrust in the back of his head. Not far away, Gu Yuyao, the younger sister who had already been frightened by her zombie mother. After seeing the scene in front of him, he immediately cried and shouted at the top of his lungs. Mom! Brother. Just as the word brother was shouted out, Gu Yuyao, who witnessed the bloody scene before her, immediately collapsed to the ground and passed out. After carrying the mother's body and her unconscious sister into each other's rooms, the sky outside the window had completely darkened. Amidst the low roar of zombies outside the window, Gu Yuchen, who dared not rashly turn on the indoor lights, lit a candle in his mother's room. With the dim candlelight, Gu Yuchen gently used the wet towel in his hand. For the mother lying in bed, wiping the bloodstains on her face. Mothers love cleanliness the most. I think the mother, who has already reunited with her father in the sky at this time, probably doesn't want her face to be so dirty, does she? After wiping off the bloodstains on his mother's face, Gu Yuchen gently covered her body with a blanket on the side. Looking at the mother lying in bed, as if asleep. Gu Yuchen, who had already shed tears like rain, couldn't help but choke and say, "Mom, don't worry, I will definitely take good care of my sister. In the future, as long as I have a breath left, I will definitely protect my sister." Mom. Speaking. Standing in front of his mother's window, Gu Yuchen choked up and knelt on the ground, banging his head heavily at his mother in bed. Subsequently, Gu Yuchen, who had risen from the ground, picked up the candle beside him and reluctantly left his mother's room. "My mother has already left, and the burden of future life will be on me." With the dim candlelight in his hand, he saw the time on the wall clock, which was already past 8 p.m. Gu Yuchen picked up 2 packets of instant noodles from the nearby shelf casually. He held up the candle in his hand and walked towards the kitchen on one side. Due to living on the first floor, in order to prevent anyone from peeking into the room through the kitchen window, a layer of anti-peeping and reflective film was pasted on the kitchen window of Gu Yuchen's house. This anti-peeping reflective film cannot effectively block the light in the kitchen. But for the dim candlelight in hand, its blocking effect on light should still be very good. After hastily cooking 2 bowls of instant noodles in the kitchen, Gu Yuchen walked towards his sister's room, holding a candle in one hand and a bowl of instant noodles in the other. When I opened my sister's door, Gu Yuyao, who had previously fainted, had already woken up. Lying on the side of the bed, sobbing softly amidst the constant roar of zombies outside the window. Gently place the bowl of instant noodles in your hand on the bedside table on the side of your sister's bed. Gu Yuchen, who gently placed his hand on his younger sister's head, looked at her sobbing sister in front of him with tears in his eyes and choked up as he spoke. "Yuyao, let's have something to eat. Mom is no longer here, and I will be fine with my brother in the future." Without waiting for the voice to choke, Gu Yuchen finished speaking. The younger sister lying on the side of the bed, sobbing, lifted her hand and knocked down the bowl of instant noodles that Gu Yuchen had just placed on the bedside table, while also knocking it down. Subsequently, Gu Yuyao, who suddenly sat up from the bed, glared angrily at her brother Gu Yuchen in front of her, crying and shouting loudly. "I don't eat the food you make. You killed Mom. You bad brother, why did you kill Mom? I don't eat your food, I want my mom. I want my mom." Gu Yuyao, with tears streaming down her face, had not yet fully shouted out her words. He was worried that his sister Gu Yuyao's roar would attract a zombie outside, Gu Yuchen. Quickly reaching out, he covered his sister Gu Yuyao's small mouth. Gazing at my sister's tearful and resentful eyes. For a moment, it made Gu Yuchen's heart feel a pain as if he had been stabbed by a knife. He can understand the resentment towards his younger sister towards him. After all, my younger sister is still young and cannot understand why she wanted to kill her mother. But how should I make my sister understand why I wanted to kill my mother? How should I explain to the 10-year-old child in front of me? How can such a child understand their own struggles and pressures? Explanation. At this moment, my younger sister, can she really listen in and understand? Perhaps, with the passage of time. One day, my younger sister will understand her own struggles and the pain in her heart, right? Maybe. After all, time is always the best teacher. After thinking about this, Gu Yuchen, whose heart was twisted like a knife, looked at his sister Gu Yuyao, who was covered in her mouth but had been staring at her with her resentful eyes. Struggling his spirit, pretending to be indifferent and with a cold expression, he said one sentence at a time. Yuyao, do you hate your brother in your heart? Because of my brother, I killed my mother. Besides hating your brother, you will quietly cry here and shout at me. What else will you do? That's right, at your current age, you can do these things too. At this point, Gu Yuchen, who reached out to cover his sister's mouth, exerted some strength on the hand that was covering her mouth. Pinching her cheeks on both sides, gazing at her eyes, she continued in a cold tone. The world has changed now. There are cannibalistic monsters everywhere outside. If you don't want to attract those monsters and eat you and your brother, you'd better be quiet. If you hate your brother, let me grow up well for him. One day, when you feel like you can face everything alone, you can kill your brother at any time and avenge your mother. But before you grow up, it's best for you to obediently listen to your brother's words. Brother, I will protect you as you grow up, taking care of you until the day you can kill your brother and avenge your mother. After saying this sentence, Gu Yuchen, who pretended to have a cold expression, released his sister and turned to walk outside the room. But before Gu Yuchen could reach the door, the voice of his sister Gu Yuyao could be heard from behind. Gu Yuchen, wait for me. When I grow up, I will definitely kill you and avenge my mother. Upon hearing her resolute words from behind, as Gu Yuchen was about to leave the room, his whole body couldn't help but tremble. A pain that felt like 10,000 arrows piercing through the heart immediately surged into my heart. Raising his hand to cover Gu Yuchen's chest, he didn't say anything to his sister who was staring behind him. I didn't stay in my sister's room for any longer. He walked straight out of his sister's room without looking back. Chapter 4, Day 7. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ah. Husband. On the afternoon of the 7th day after the outbreak of the zombie virus, there was pouring rain outside the window. During these 7 days, my mother's body had already decayed in her bedroom. The nauseating stench continued to spread from the crack in my mother's bedroom door to other rooms. In order to block the spread of the putrid smell in his mother's bedroom, Gu Yuchen had to find tape and seal the gaps in her bedroom door. In the past few days, Gu Yuchen has had the idea of moving his mother's decaying body to the backyard for burial. Just in the past few days, a few survivors who wanted to escape the community have attracted zombies everywhere in the community. Gu Yuchen, who was hiding at home, dared not rashly leave the house for a moment. And just as Gu Yuchen was squatting outside his mother's bedroom door, he used the tape in his hand to stick to the gap on her bedroom door. I just heard a scream coming from outside the window. The scream was made by a woman, with an unusually mournful voice. Just by simply listening to the sound, one can imagine the tragic situation of this woman after being knocked down by a group of zombies. In these past few days, such screams and scenes of zombies eating live human corpses. Let him, who is hiding behind the curtains in the room, listen too much and see too much. Basically, now he is completely numb and indifferent to what happens outside the room. It's good for anyone outside to die. As long as he and his sister are killed and eaten by zombies, it's good. Just as Gu Yuchen heard the screams of a woman, he still squatted outside his mother's bedroom, using the tape in his hand to do the work in front of him and timing it. Gu Yuyao, the younger sister who has been sitting in the room reading storybooks since waking up. He eagerly appeared behind him, holding half a packet of potato chips in his hand. Brother, did you hear the screams just now? Let me tell you, I can see it clearly by the window. The one who just had an accident was Sister Wang Qi on the 3rd floor across from me. Sister Wang Qi and her husband Wei Yang climbed down the stairs together from the 3rd floor window, following a rope made of sheets. They were all carrying backpacks, so it seems that they also wanted to leave. Perhaps it was because what I said to my sister that day had an impact. During these 7 days, my sister Gu Yuyao has undergone significant changes. Besides listening to oneself and eating obediently. Every day, besides hiding in the room to read storybooks, I actively observe the situation outside the window by hiding behind the curtains. For the bloody scenes of the zombies outside the window, biting and devouring the living, my sister also achieved the same indifference as herself. But the only thing that made him feel a bit chilly on his back was that after that night, his sister had an extra kitchen knife on her body. I really don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing. Sometimes he is really worried. My younger sister will stab him in the back while he's not paying attention. Wait for the younger sister who appears behind the scenes to finish speaking. Gu Yuchen, who was squatting on the ground, turned his head to look at his energetic sister behind him and asked calmly. Both of them were killed by zombies, right? Why only hear one person's screams? Adding them too, this should be the 12th person, right? As soon as Gu Yuchen spoke, Gu Yuyao, with an excited expression on her young face, shook her little head and said. No, it's the 11th living person outside our house who was eaten by zombies. Her husband Wei Yang didn't die and ran away. He was the first living person to successfully escape from our community in the past few days. After saying this sentence, Gu Yuyao, who still had an excited expression on her small face, approached her brother Gu Yuchen and continued speaking with a smile. Brother, do you know how Wei Yang successfully escaped from our community? Let me tell you, I can see it clearly. As soon as they climbed down the 3rd floor, they were discovered by nearby zombies. When those zombies rushed in front of them, I saw Wei Yang's brother pushing Wang Qi's sister towards them. He took advantage of the zombies' attack on Wang Qi's sister and turned around to run away. The operation of Uncle Zhao in Building 7 was the same as the day before yesterday. However, Brother Wei Yang succeeded and Uncle Zhao was eaten by other zombies. After hearing his sister Gu Yuyao's words, Gu Yuchen squatted on the ground and didn't say anything. He has seen too many of these things in these 7 days. Faced with a swarm of zombies rushing towards him, his son pushed his father, his husband blocked the knife with his wife, and his girlfriend invited her boyfriend to die in the face of great disasters. Human nature is often so ugly and ruthless. It's not for anything else, it's just for the sake of survival. After completely sealing the crack in the door of his mother's bedroom in front of him, Gu Yuchen stood up from the ground. He stared at the potato chips in his sister's hand, which had been eaten to half a pack, and spoke calmly. Eat less snacks when you have nothing to do. We don't have much food to eat at home anymore. In order to wait for the possibility of military rescue at any time, we should try our best to save some food. At this time, the snacks you love to eat are also the food we use to save our lives. After hearing my brother Gu Yuchen's words, Gu Yuyao, holding half a pack of potato chips in her hand, first lowered her head to look at the half pack in her hand, and then looked up at her brother Gu Yuchen in front of her. On her immature little face, there was a disdainful expression. Using a mocking tone that should not have appeared at her age, she spoke up and questioned. Brother, can you stop being foolish? These past few days, you've been telling me to wait at home for the military's rescue. It's been 7 days now, where is the military's rescue? Our home has been without water or electricity for 6 days now. You say this is temporary. Once the military's rescue arrives, everything will be restored. But this is already the 7th day. You tell me, where is the military rescue we are waiting for at home? How long do we have to wait? Being questioned by his 10-year-old sister immediately made 20-year-old Gu Yuchen feel a sense of stuttering. At home, where there was an inexplicable power outage for 6 days, Gu Yuchen had already lost all contact with the outside world due to the inability to charge his phone in a timely manner. For everything that happened outside, the siblings only knew a scene outside the room window. Is it really my own pure wishful thinking that the army has not waited for rescue for 7 consecutive days? Is it true that military units with modern weapon bonuses are like the settings in movies and games? In the face of swarms of zombies, even an army armed to the teeth has no chance of winning. Just as Gu Yuchen felt momentarily speechless, he didn't know how to answer the questioning from his sister in front of him. He just used tape to stick and seal the mother's room. Suddenly, there was a loud sound of heavy objects hitting the neighboring wall with force. Dong! 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 After hearing the sound of smashing against the wall, Gu Yuchen immediately felt a hint of unease. This is already the 7th day of the zombie virus outbreak, if Wang Bo who lives next door is still alive. So Wang's family's food should have been finished long ago by now. In this situation, in order to survive, Wang Bo, who lives next door, must have had an idea for his supermarket. If Wang Bo at this time simply wants to ask for some food from himself, then it's not a big deal. But I'm afraid the other party might use some crooked ideas about his supermarket. After all, at this time, as long as you have enough food in your hands, you also have the capital to survive. In these few short days, he had seen too many ugly faces belonging to the living. At this moment, Gu Yuchen had no intention of paying attention to his sister's questioning in front of him. Quickly turning around, he lifted his hand and tore off a large amount of tape that he had just pasted on the gap of his mother's door. And as the sound of heavy objects hitting the wall sounded, it instantly attracted the zombies near the outside of the room. Amidst the sound of smashing against the wall, a low roar and running sound of zombies echoed outside the room. Roar! 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 Chapter 5, Little Brother. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Dong! 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 Amidst the sound of forceful smashing against the wall, there was a low roar from numerous zombies outside the room. Roar! 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 The zombies rushing into the hallway outside the door, following the sound, kept hitting the tightly closed door. On the door of the room that was blocked by Gu Yuchen with heavy objects, there were bursts of forceful impact sounds. If the door was not sealed with heavy objects by Gu Yuchen beforehand. At this moment, Gu Yuchen had reason to believe that the anti-theft door that isolated them from the outside world might have been breached by a group of zombies in the corridor amidst the loud impact. But at this moment, he had no mood to pay attention to the sound of collisions coming from the anti-theft door. After all, he piled up a lot of heavy objects behind the anti-theft door, and the group of zombies outside couldn't even knock the door open. And what worries him the most is probably the group of zombies who are following the sound and gathering outside his backyard, emitting low growls. If Wang Bo, who lives next door, is allowed to continue smashing the wall, he cannot guarantee that the iron fence in the backyard, which is only over 1 meter high, will be able to hold back the increasing number of zombie groups for how long. Just as Gu Yuchen, with his back to his sister Gu Yuyao, was frantically tearing at the large amount of tape that had just been pasted on the crack of his mother's door. Standing behind her brother, Gu Yuyao quietly reached out and pulled out a sharp kitchen knife from behind, amidst the low roar of numerous zombies outside the room. At the same time, Gu Yuchen, who was standing outside his mother's door, immediately tore off most of the tape that had been pasted on the gap of her mother's door. After hastily opening his mother's door, Gu Yuchen rushed into her room first. As soon as I rushed into my mother's room, a foul odor that rushed deep into my brain immediately hit me. Due to weather conditions, the mother's body, which was placed on the bed by Gu Yuchen, had already decayed. A large number of green-headed flies appeared from somewhere, constantly circling around the room. At this point, the mother's face exposed on the outside of the blanket had become swollen and twisted. The jet black hair that my mother originally had also fallen off around the pillow as the body decayed. White and plump maggots kept wriggling around their mother's swollen face. Upon seeing his mother's appearance at this moment, Gu Yuchen rushed into the room and instantly felt an indescribable heartache. A loud bang. On the side wall of the mother's bed, a hole that could already accommodate an adult to drill through was further enlarged in the loud noise. As the hole in the wall in front of him widened, Gu Yuchen, who felt heartbroken in an instant, was pulled back into reality. looking at the hole on the wall in front of me that has been enlarged again. Immediately taking out a hammer from behind, Gu Yuchen, who had been caught off guard, spoke harshly to the person on the other side of the hole. Don't smash it. What do you want to do? If you make such a loud noise, you're not afraid to let the zombies outside. Before waiting for Gu Yuchen, who was holding a hammer, to finish speaking to the person on the other side of the hole. On the other side of the hole, a young man wearing a safety helmet suddenly revealed his smiling face. The man's gaze met Gu Yuchen's 4 eyes in the room, and he immediately smiled and cursed at Gu Yuchen with great joy. Sleeping slot. Brother, I never expected that you were still alive. After saying this sentence, the man immediately showed a sad expression on his face and comforted Gu Yuchen, who was standing in the room. Brother, when I saw Aunt Chu's body just now, I thought you were also dead. Mourning, brother. I know, brother, you must be very sad about Aunt Chu's death. But we, who are still alive, must continue to live at this time, right? The man on the other side of the hole is not someone else. It is Zhang Heng, the younger brother of the same age as Gu Yuchen, who lives in building 101 next door. After seeing that the other person was his own little brother Zhang Heng, Gu Yuchen, who was holding a hammer tightly in his hand, immediately let go of the warning in his heart. Just as he was thrusting the hammer back into his waist, Gu Yuchen prepared to ask Zhang Heng on the side of the cave entrance how to get to the next door's Wang Bo's house. Following Gu Yuchen into her mother's room, her younger sister Gu Yuyao happily shouted to Zhang Heng on the side of the cave entrance. Zhang Heng, why did you run to Uncle Wang's house next door? After hearing Gu Yuyao's question. On the other side of the cave, Zhang Heng raised his hand and scratched his head with some embarrassment. Looking at Gu Yuchen in the room, he smiled at Gu Yuyao who was asking questions. Xiaoyao, isn't there nothing to eat at your Henga's house? So, Henga, I'll run to Wang Bo's house to find some food. Who knew, the Wang family didn't have anything to eat either. And then, Henga and I just wanted to come to your house and find something to eat. At this point, standing on the other side of the hole, Zhang Heng immediately turned his head to one side and shouted in a low voice. Xiaoya, come here quickly. Come and see, I smashed the wall and who did I smash out? With Zhang Heng's words spoken, a beautiful figure familiar to Gu Yuchen appeared in the room on the side of the hole. The Xiaoya mentioned by Zhang Heng is not someone else. It was Gu Yuchen and Zhang Heng, the school flower of high school, Li Mengya. Li Mengya, who has a pure and charming appearance, just appeared in front of the cave. Standing on one side, Zhang Heng hugged Li Mengya in his arms and said to Gu Yuchen on the other side of the hole as if showing off. What's going on, brother? I didn't expect it, did I? Did I catch our high school flower, brother? Hee hee. I'll ask you, do you envy me? Are you jealous? In the future, remember to greet your siblings when meeting. Looking at the side of the hole, Zhang Heng had a flamboyant expression on his face. In Gu Yuchen's heart, an indescribable sourness suddenly rose. Haha, I can't believe it. Zhang Heng, this grandson, actually secretly got Li Mengya, the big school flower, behind his back. Haha, I really don't understand, where am I not stronger than Zhang Heng? Why did Li Mengya only take a liking to Zhang Heng and not to herself? Although Gu Yuchen's heart was filled with endless bitterness towards Zhang Heng, he never forgot the brotherly relationship between himself and Zhang Heng. After a brief conversation with Li Mengya in Zhang Henghuai's arms, Gu Yuchen, who knew the reason why Zhang Heng smashed the wall, immediately walked out of his mother's room. Among the few remaining foods at home, Zhang Heng packed some food and a few packs of cigarettes in plastic bags. After handing a bag of food in his hand to Zhang Heng and Li Mengya on the side of the hole, standing in front of the broken wall, Gu Yuchen whispered to Zhang Heng on the other side of the hole. Brother, don't smash the wall again in the future. If the sound is too loud, it can easily attract zombies. Although my family doesn't have much food, if we save some, we should be able to hold on for a while. Although I don't know if we can sustain the military's rescue, the four of us must work together to survive. It's really a last resort, let's work together as brothers, so we can take care of each other. After hearing Gu Yuchen's instructions, Zhang Heng held food in his hand. A sad expression appeared on his face and he said to Gu Yuchen on the side of the hole. Brother, I have taken note of what you said. But you should also understand, but if there is surplus food in my family, I won't take the risk of smashing the wall to find something to eat. It's only when Wang Bo and your family are quiet that I dare to smash the wall. Since the day these zombies appeared, I have completely cut off contact with my parents who are on a business trip out of town. I think they are probably no longer there, right? After that, Zhang Heng, with a sad expression on his face, was suddenly replaced by a smile. Immediately after the conversation turned, he looked at Gu Yuchen in front of him and smiled. Brother, do you think this outside world looks like the zombie game we played together? For the convenience of taking care of each other in the future, Xiaoya and I will stay at Wang Bo's house. Our room is next to Yu Yao's room. If you have anything to say, please speak up. Just like the two of us playing games together, in the future, we can cooperate and take care of each other. We can definitely fight together in this zombie-infested world and create a dawn. Believe me, it won't be long before we smash the walls together and look for food everywhere. I have experience with this, buddy. When the time comes, buddy will cover you up. After chatting with Zhang Heng next door, the four of them left their respective rooms. After leaving his mother's room, he came to Gu Yuchen in front of the French window in the living room. He raised his hand and opened a gap in the curtains in front of him, observing the situation in the backyard. As the sound of Zhang Heng smashing the wall came to an end, the group of zombies gathered outside the iron fence in the backyard also quieted down a lot. The group of zombies, losing their sound attraction, swayed their bodies in the heavy rain and gradually walked towards the distance. Putting down the curtains, turning around to look at the shelf, it could only sustain the food that 4 people consumed for a week. Standing behind the curtains, Gu Yuchen suddenly felt that what Zhang Heng had just said might be right. Before long, they may really have to go smash walls and search for food everywhere. Compared to the numerous zombie groups outside, perhaps they are the safest under the protection of the house. From then on, with the help of Zhang Heng, a good brother, my future life will definitely not be too difficult. As long as their brothers unite, they can definitely fight together to create a dawn that belongs to them in this zombie-infested world. After thinking about this, standing behind the curtains, Gu Yuchen couldn't help but raise the corners of his mouth, revealing a confident smile. Chapter 6. Good Brothers in the End of the World. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Zhang Heng, wearing a safety helmet, left the room with his girlfriend Li Menya after they smashed holes in the wall. Just as she received the food given by Gu Yuchen, Li Menya, who still had a happy smile on her face, immediately changed her expression. Pulling Zhang Heng, who was carrying a bag of food, into the living room, he lowered his voice and complained to Zhang Heng with disgust on his face. Didn't you always tell me how strong your relationship with Gu Yuchen is? Didn't you say that Gu Yuchen is your good brother? Take a look for yourself. What did Gu Yuchen give us to eat? Just a few packets of instant noodles and bread. What is he doing here? He's passing the begging. Besides being able to fill the stomach, what nutrients does this kind of thing have? His family runs a supermarket, so they always have canned meat and ham, right? After saying this sentence, Li Menya smiled slightly mockingly on her innocent face, staring at Zhang Heng in front of her and continuing. Oh, if your relationship with Gu Yuchen is as good as what you said. How could he only give you these things without any nutrition? I guess you're the only fool who always treats Gu Yuchen like a brother. But in Gu Yuchen's heart, there is no brother like you at all. Li Menya's words have just finished. Zhang Heng, who squeezed a helpless bitter smile on his face, spoke to Li Menya in front of him to comfort him. Xiaoya, I think it might be because you're being careless. Yu-Chen and I are good brothers who grew up together since childhood. I know Yu-Chen's character the best, and he definitely won't hide anything from me. Besides, it has been 7 days since the zombie outbreak outside. During these 7 days, Yu-Chen and his sister always have to eat, right? In this situation, could Yu-Chen be willing to eat? Before Zhang Heng could finish speaking with a bitter smile on his face, Li Mengya, who originally had a mocking expression on her face, immediately said with tears flashing in her eyes and a pitiful expression. Ah Heng, I know what you're trying to say. But you should also know that the world has changed now. We can't risk you smashing the wall just for food, can we? Do you know what I see when you smash the wall and I watch the wind for you? I saw a lot of zombies outside the window, all attracted by the sound of you smashing the wall. Have you ever thought about what if those zombies you attracted rushed in? Have you ever thought about what if you were to smash through a wall and there were zombies on the other side of the wall? What would I do if you had an accident? After saying this sentence, Li Mengya, whose eyes sparkled with tears, immediately raised her hand and gently stroked her flat lower abdomen, choking and sobbing. Ah Heng, I don't want to hide it from you anymore. I'm pregnant. For the sake of our child, I really don't want you to be in any danger. Similarly, for the sake of our children, we need a place with plenty of food. If it's not absolutely necessary, I really don't want to leave here and run outside. Ah Heng, do you know? I'm really scared. We'll be eaten by those zombies outside like those who run out. I'm afraid our child, before they're born, will be. Li Mengya couldn't help choking and sobbing before she finished speaking. He plunged into Zhang Heng's arms in front of him, lowered his voice, and began to whimper. Zhang Heng was very clear about the meaning in Li Mengya's words. After crying in Li Mengya's arms for a long time, Zhang Heng locked his eyebrows tightly. He raised his hand and lightly patted Li Mengya's soft and boneless shoulder, whispering in his ear. Xiaoya, don't worry. For you and our children, I will definitely take good care of you. Speaking. Zhang Heng, whose expression instantly became resolute, lightly kissed Li Mengya's head. On the morning of the next day, it rained heavily outside the window all day and night, but it still didn't stop. Perhaps due to a heavy night's rain, the group of zombies that had gathered outside the backyard yesterday has long since disappeared. In the empty rain curtain, there is no sense of danger. Standing in front of the window, observing the situation outside through the gaps in the curtains for a while, Gu Yuchen wanted to pick up 2 packets of instant noodles from the nearby shelf as breakfast for him and his sister. As soon as his right hand touched the instant noodles on the shelf, Gu Yuchen heard a slight noise coming from his mother's room. Considering that it might be Zhang Heng who lived at Wang Bo's house next door, Gu Yuchen, who came to find him for something, immediately walked towards his mother's room. Upon arriving at his mother's door, Gu Yuchen reached out and touched the door handle before hearing any sound. The door in front of him was immediately opened from the inside. As the door opened, Zhang Heng, who was pinching his nose with one hand and opening the door with the other, suddenly appeared in front of Gu Yuchen. Gu Yuchen, who was waiting in front of the door, spoke up. Zhang Heng, holding his nose and suppressing the foul smell inside the room. Immediately, he smiled and said to Gu Yuchen standing in front of him. Brother, didn't you sleep in today? It's not like your style. Hee hee. I have nothing else to do with you, I just want to discuss it with you. How about we bury my Aunt Chu's body today? It's not a big deal to keep it indoors, is it? My Aunt Chu's body smells bad, always smelling the rotten smell of the body. It's not good for us living, is it? That smell has all gone to Uncle Wang's house. I just looked and there are no signs of zombies on the street outside the backyard. How about we take advantage of the rain outside and bury my Aunt Chu's body in your backyard together? After hearing Zhang Heng's suggestion, Gu Yuchen did not refuse. He had long had the idea of burying his mother's body in peace. If it weren't for the constant wandering of zombies outside, he wouldn't have let his mother's body linger in the room for so long. Today, Zhang Heng suddenly proposed this suggestion, which just filled a regret in his heart. Gu Yuchen, who suddenly burst into tears, hugged his young brother and choked up his gratitude. "Brother, my good brother. You don't have to do anything, just help me stand in front of the backyard door and watch the wind. With you helping me watch the wind, my heart will be at ease." Speaking. Zhang Heng and Zhang Heng patted Gu Yuchen on each other's back a few times, turned around and went into the side utility room to find the shovel needed for digging. When Gu Yuchen came out of the sundry room with a shovel, his sister Gu Yuyao, who had been sleeping in the room, had stood beside Zhang Heng. As soon as she saw her brother Gu Yuchen, Gu Yuyao, whose innocent little face showed no expression, she immediately spoke up. "I heard what you and my brother Zhang Heng just said in the room. Bury your mother, I also need to help." After hearing my sister's words, Gu Yuchen, holding a shovel in his hand, did not refuse. Just looking at the younger sister in front of her, she suppressed the tears that were about to fall from her eyes and said, "It should be. This is the last journey to see off my mother, it should be." After saying this sentence, not wanting his younger sister to see Gu Yuchen crying, she lowered her head and walked quickly towards the anti-theft door leading to the backyard. Perhaps due to heavy rain all day and night, the soil in the backyard was easily excavated. While my younger sister Gu Yuyao and Zhang Heng were helping to watch the wind from the side. Not long after, Gu Yuchen with a shovel in his hand. A 2-meter long, half-meter wide, and 1-meter deep soil pit was dug out in the backyard. Subsequently, Gu Yuchen returned to the room and wrapped his mother's already decaying body in bedding, carrying it to the backyard. And when Gu Yuchen was about to gently put his mother's body into the pit, a car key fell from the blanket wrapped around his mother's body and landed at Gu Yuchen's feet. Gu Yuchen, who hurriedly placed his mother's body in the pit, immediately recognized the key to the van under his feet, which was the key to the van his mother used to transport goods. With the keys to this car, wouldn't the 4 of them be able to escape this city at any time? Perhaps, his mother is still protecting him and his sister in the dark, right? Perhaps the outside world will be better than where they are located. Gu Yuchen, holding the key to his own van tightly in his hand, thought to himself. Zhang Heng, who was originally standing on the side to help Gu Yuchen watch the wind, has quietly retreated back to Gu Yuchen's supermarket. Zhang Heng entered the supermarket without any hesitation. After knocking down the anti-theft door leading to the backyard of Gu Yuchen's house, he threw Gu Yuchen and Gu Yuyao siblings into the backyard. Touch. Gu Yuchen, who heard the sound of the backyard anti-theft door crashing to death, looked up and saw his own suddenly locked anti-theft door. Only then did I realize that I had been tricked by my most trusted little brother. Before waiting for an instant, Gu Yuchen, who was furious, cursed at Zhang Heng who had locked the backyard anti-theft door inside the room. Zhang Heng, who was hiding in the room, slammed the anti-theft door in front of him behind it with force. Dong! 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 The sudden sound from the anti-theft door in the backyard instantly triggered a low roar from nearby zombies around. Roar! 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 Chapter 7. Mother's Van. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Roar! 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 With the low roar of zombies coming from around, Gu Yuchen, who was suddenly locked outside the backyard by Zhang Heng, immediately swallowed the curse words that were instantly mentioned in his throat. Without much hesitation, he hugged his sister Gu Yuyao with a waist around him, glaring angrily at the anti-theft door in front of him. He turned around and hugged his sister, vigorously crossing the low iron fence in the backyard, running towards the corner of his own building. The direction where Gu Yuchen fled with his sister was exactly where his van was parked. Even if something unexpected happened midway that prevented him and his sister from entering the car. This direction is also the closest to the entrance of the community for the siblings. Fortunately, the location where the van was parked was not too far from the siblings. Fortunately, there were no signs of zombies until the siblings entered the van. Gu Yuchen, who was sitting in the driver's seat of the chartered car, just closed the car door. A group of zombies, attracted by the sound of Zhang Heng tapping the anti-theft door, immediately rushed past the van with a chilling low roar. Just as Gu Yuchen was sitting in the driver's seat, he felt a burst of joy for the luck of himself and his sister. Gu Yuyao, the younger sister who had just been thrown onto the middle row seat, nibbled on a ham sausage she had obtained from somewhere while speaking vaguely. "Brother, your relationship with brother Zhang Heng is really good. He not only locked us outside, but also occupied our home. He deliberately knocked on the backyard door in his room, trying to attract zombies to eat the two of us. He really values his emotions and righteousness towards you. His righteousness is thin and thin." Sister Gu Yuyao's words in the middle row seat were somewhat ambiguous. But the sarcastic tone in the words could still be understood by Gu Yuchen sitting in the driver's seat. Haha, what a killing and heart-wrenching speech. Not only do you have to mock yourself, but you also have to stab yourself hard in the heart. Since that night, Gu Yuchen has accepted the sudden change in temperament, like a younger sister who has grown up a lot in an instant. The venomous tongue attacks that his sister occasionally throws at him have already made him ignore immunity. As soon as Gu Yuyao finished speaking, Gu Yuchen, who was sitting in the driver's seat, turned his head expressionlessly towards his younger sister behind him. Just as he turned his head, Gu Yuchen noticed the back seats of his van. Surprisingly, there was still a whole row of goods piled up in the future that could be unloaded. "I think these goods were all picked up by my mother 2 days ago. Due to a sudden fever, there is no time to move the goods into the supermarket in the future." At this moment, Gu Yuyao, who was only nibbling on a ham sausage in her hand, spoke vaguely again. "Actually, I feel like it's good for us to be left outside by brother Zhangheng. Otherwise, we wouldn't have known that mom had put so much delicious food in the car. I just looked at it. In addition to a large package of various cigarettes and several cases of baijiu, there are all ham sausages and snacks and drinks that need to be supplemented in our supermarket. Look, here's my favorite handgun chicken leg. There's also potato chips, duck neck." Speaking. Gu Yuyao, with her mouth filled with ham and her cheeks bulging. Just like a cheerful little hamster, with an excited expression, she showed her brother Gu Yuchen the various snacks she had just discovered in the car. The younger sister, who was not waiting for an excited expression, blurted out her words. Gu Yuchen, who had a cheerful expression on his handsome face, immediately spoke to his sister Gu Yuyao, who was busy showing off her discovery, suppressing the pleasure in his heart. "Xiao Yao, do you think there are several cases of baijiu in the car? Give me 2 bottles quickly." "No, get me 6 bottles, I need a box." After hearing his brother Gu Yuchen's words, Gu Yuyao, holding a bag of pistol chicken legs in her hand and her mouth full of ham meat, suddenly froze in expression. After staring at her brother in a daze for a long time, Gu Yuyao swallowed the food in her mouth and then, with a somewhat surprised expression, spoke to her brother in front of her. "Brother, do you want to drink? Are you sure you can drink 6 bottles of baijiu? If you drink 6 bottles of baijiu, won't you be foolish? At this moment, shouldn't you think about where we're going next? We can't just hide in this car, can we?" Looking at his surprised younger sister in front of him, Gu Yuchen, whose dark eyes flashed with a hint of killing intent, immediately smiled lightly at the corner of his mouth and said, "Xiao Yao, you remember. Your brother and I have never been the same, willing to suffer losses and be bullied. No matter who bullies me, no matter how strong the other person is. As long as he dares to bully me, I will make him pay me back twice as much. I will avenge him on the same day and never let him stay overnight. You just saw it, it was Zhang Heng who betrayed us first. So, he can't blame me for being ruthless either. Knowing that my brother wanted wine, I wanted to seek revenge from Zhang Heng." On her tender little face, Gu Yuyao suddenly gave birth to a mischievous smile, and then smiled and said. Hee hee. Good brother, you really value love and righteousness. It's my brother, come and chop me, I'll send you to the west. However, brother, I want to know. How do you want to use wine and send brother Zhongheng to the west? Are you looking for him to drink? Take his life while he's drunk. As she asked, Gu Yuyao, sitting in the middle row seat, turned over to look for the baijiu on the back seat. Soon, Gu Yuyao opened a box of baijiu from the rear seat. He handed the 6 bottles of baijiu in the box to Gu Yuchen, who was sitting in the driver's seat. After receiving 6 bottles of white wine from my sister, I took a random look at Gu Yuchen, who had a 56-degree alcohol logo printed on the baijiu box. With a faint smile on the corner of his mouth, he smiled at his sister sitting behind him, looking at him. You guessed it right, I really want to invite that dog named Zhongheng to drink. However, I bought him a Molotov cocktail. Just as Gu Yuchen finished his sentence, his sister Gu Yuyao sat in the middle row seat. Then he leaned closer and asked with an innocent expression on his face. Brother, what if brother Zhongheng doesn't open the door for you and doesn't let you in? In that case, won't you treat him to that cocktail anymore? Looking at his younger sister's innocent expression, he couldn't help but raise his hand and lightly pinch Gu Yuchen's chubby cheeks, and smiled lightly. It's okay, brother. I don't even need him to open the door for me. Next, we just need to patiently wait for a more suitable opportunity in this car. It's still early now. Brother, take a break first. Come and help him keep an eye on the wind. Later, brother, please watch the play. Speaking. Sitting in the driver's seat, Gu Yuchen leaned against the seat behind him and closed his eyes. At noon. It has been raining heavily outside the car window for a day and a night, and it has become smaller. After seeing that the outside of the car was very safe, Gu Yuchen reached out to open the fuel tank cover of the van inside the car and gently opened the driver's door. After getting off the bus, Gu Yuchen opened the 6 bottles of baijiu prepared in advance one by one and poured out half of the baijiu in the bottle. Subsequently, insert a hose found inside the car into the fuel tank of the van. Use the hose to suck out the gasoline in the fuel tank, and pour the gasoline into the 6 white wine bottles that poured out half a bottle of baijiu respectively. Finally, tearing an old towel found in the car into several strips of cloth. Seal the mouths of 6 white wine bottles containing mixed liquid of alcohol and gasoline one by one. In this way, the Molotov cocktail mentioned by Gu Yuchen has been completed. To put it bluntly, this Molotov cocktail. It is the combustion bottle that often appears in games and war movies. In fact, according to the alcohol content of these 6 bottles of baijiu, the alcohol content of 56 degrees can be directly used as a combustion bottle. But Gu Yuchen believes that a combustion bottle made solely of 56-degree alcohol. It is not enough to reflect my passionate friendship with my good brother Zhongheng. Only with this combustion aid that perfectly blends alcohol and gasoline can one express their sincerest passion towards their good brother Zhongheng. Looking at the 6 completed combustion bottles in front of him, Gu Yuchen couldn't help but smile lightly at the corner of his mouth. Just as Gu Yuchen was preparing everything, he was ready to let his good brother Zhongheng have a good drink. First, go secretly and check the current situation of your good brother. Gu Yuyao, who had been sitting inside the van, scraping the car window and observing her brother Gu Yuchen's every move. Immediately lowering the car window, facing Gu Yuchen who was about to leave, he lowered his voice and asked. Brother, where are you going? After hearing the voice of my sister asking from behind. Gu Yuchen, who was about to turn around and leave, turned his head to look at his sister Gu Yuyao, who was poking her small head out of the car window, and smiled lightly. It's okay. Brother, I'm going to see Zhongheng, that dog thing. What's the specific situation now? To be precise, I'm going to see which room he is in right now. After all, the gift I gave him is already prepared. If I don't know where this dog thing is, wouldn't the gift I carefully prepared for him be in vain, brother? Xiaoyao, continue to help my brother watch the wind in the car. Wait a moment, brother, I'll invite you to watch a big show. Speaking. Gu Yuchen, with a faint smile on his face, turned around and walked towards the corner of the parking lot without looking back. Chapter 8. Love Like Fire. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Xiaoya, come and try this canned peach. I just tasted it, it's very sweet. Eat more canned fruits, give yourself a good meal, and supplement your vitamins. Speaking. Sitting on Gu Yuyao's bed, Zhang Heng opened a can of yellow peaches that he had just opened. Handed to Li Menya next to him, who was eating a pack of boneless phoenix claws. Since knocking on the backyard door and attracting numerous zombies, Gu Yuchen and his sister, who were locked in the backyard, scared them away. Using Gu Yuchen's trust in himself, Zhang Heng occupied the Gu Yuchen family. Li Menya, who was waiting for her news next door to Gu Yuchen's house, was connected to Gu Yuchen's home. Upon seeing the various foods on the shelves, Li Menya's eyes suddenly lit up. He eagerly took a large amount of his favorite snacks from the shelf and lived with Zhang Heng in Gu Yuyao's room in a dignified manner. Both of them were clear at this moment that Gu Yuchen was right in telling them yesterday. The food at Gu Yuchen's house is indeed only enough for the four of them to eat for a week. But 4 people can sustain food for a week, but now they can sustain the 2 of them for a month. Maybe it doesn't even take a month. They could rely on the food in their hands and wait for the military troops mentioned by Gu Yuchen to come and rescue them. After finishing the boneless chicken feet in her hand, Li Menya casually threw the packaging bag into a snack garbage bag under the bed. While raising his hand to take the yellow-headed canned food handed by Zhang Heng, he casually asked. Ah Heng, do you think so? Gu Yuchen and her sister, are they still alive now? Zhang Heng, who had no guilty expression on his face, lifted his hand and hugged Li Menya beside him, then said without hesitation. Who knows? Anyway, I did what you said. After tricking them into the backyard, I locked the door and slapped it to attract nearby zombies. At that time, so many zombies were attracted, even if Gu Yuchen could run out of the backyard with his sister, he probably wouldn't be able to run out of this community. They are probably already being eaten by zombies in some corner by now. After hearing Zhang Heng's words, Li Menya, nestled in Zhang Heng's arms, stirred the yellow peach flesh in the can with a spoon. He spoke softly to Zhang Heng, who had no guilty expression on his face, and comforted him. Ah Heng, you don't have to feel too guilty in your heart. After all, Gu Yuchen and his sister were killed by zombies and have nothing to do with us. We just kicked our children out of their room for the sake of it. The food here is limited, and for the sake of our children, we have no other choice. You know, life and death are predetermined, and this is Gu Yuchen and his siblings. Before she could comfort Zhang Heng, Li Menya finished speaking her words. Just as Li Menya was speaking, he put his other hand into Zhang Heng's short skirt. While using her hands to explore Li Menya's legs in her short skirt, he said with a wicked smile in Li Menya's ear. What do I feel guilty about? Everything I do is for you and our children. No matter who you are, you and your child cannot be blocked on the road to live well. Wife, I'm so well behaved today. Shouldn't you reward me well? I think we should go and say hello to the child in your belly. Li Menya, who recognized the meaning of Zhang Heng's words, placed the yellow-headed canned food in her hand on the bedside table beside her. Faced with Zhang Heng groping inside her skirt, her small face coquettishly spoke up and instructed. Be gentle and don't attract anyone from outside. Li Menya, with a shy face, only spoke half of what was in her mouth. Zhang Heng, who was burned by desire, turned over and pressed himself onto the bed. Before long, a whimsical moan came from Gu Yuyao's room. At this moment, the tumultuous 2 of them were still unaware of their conversation just now. Gu Yuchen, who had already been rushed to determine the location and situation of the 2, squatted outside Gu Yuyao's window and listened attentively. In Gu Yuyao's room, a double performance belonging to Zhang Heng and Li Menya had just begun. Gu Yuchen, who had been squatting outside his sister's window eavesdropping, quietly left without changing his expression after determining the positions of Zhang Heng and Li Menya. Before leaving the window, Gu Yuchen also looked at several zombies wandering nearby. He believed that those wandering zombies would soon be attracted by the duet sound emanating from the room. At that time, there will definitely be many zombies, specially came to cheer for the battle between Zhang Heng and Li Menya outside the window, right? In this way, when these two dog men and women discover everything they have done. Even if they can escape from his house, the anti-theft door blocked by heavy objects. It is estimated that he personally delivered himself to the mouth of the group of zombies gathered outside the window to watch. Gu Yuchen, who was thinking so in his heart, couldn't help but feel a burst of joy in his heart. Arriving at his own van, he smiled lightly at his sister Gu Yuyao, who had been lying on the window all along. Gu Yuchen picked up the 6 bottles of Molotov cocktail prepared for Zhang Heng with both hands and walked quickly towards his backyard. When he arrived at his backyard, Gu Yuchen, holding 6 bottles of Molotov cocktails in his arms, did not directly open fire at his supermarket. But first, 2 bottles of Molotov cocktails were placed outside the window of their own supermarket and outside their mother's room. Subsequently, Gu Yuchen, holding the last 2 bottles of Molotov cocktails in his hand, climbed over the iron fence between his own backyard and the neighboring Wang family's backyard and entered the Wang family's backyard. Looking at the window of the room in front of Wang Bo's house that Zhang Heng had smashed through with his own wall yesterday, Gu Yuchen, standing in the backyard of Wang Bo's house, showed a faint smile at the corner of his mouth. After a light smile, Gu Yuchen, who took out a lighter, lit one of the bottles of Molotov cocktail and threw it towards the window of Wang's room in front of him. Gu Yuchen's mind was calculating very clearly at this moment. This room in the Wang family should be considered as a retreat for Zhang Heng and Li Menya. This room is quite far away from the 2 of them who are currently tumultuous in their sister's room. Even if there is any noise, the 2 of them, who are immersed in joy at this moment, cannot detect it immediately. And when he used these combustion bottles to light his mother's room, even if the noise was loud, the 2 of them who discovered their actions lost their only way out at that moment. When I ignite my own supermarket again, it will be the only way for Zhang Heng and Li Menya, a couple of dogs, to survive. The only way to escape is to remove the heavy objects blocking the front door and open the front door. But at that time, the 2 people who chose to escape from the front door. So they personally delivered themselves to the zombies gathered outside their sister Gu Yuyao's window. A loud bang. The combustion bottle thrown by Gu Yuchen passed through the crack in the anti-theft fence on the outside of the glass window. He directly smashed the glass in the room and flew it into Wang Bo's room. I don't know where the combustion bottle hit the room, but in an instant, countless light blue sparks burst out in the room. The first combustion bottle just exploded in the room, and without any hesitation, Gu Yuchen immediately, he lit the second bottle of Molotov cocktail in his hand and threw it into the room. As the second combustion bottle exploded in the room, a low roar from a large number of zombies echoed around the backyard. Roar! 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 Gu Yuchen, who heard the low roar of zombies around him, didn't care to check the flames burning in the room. He turned around and flipped into his backyard. After picking up the 2 bottles of Molotov cocktails placed outside the window of my mother's room, Gu Yuchen, who dared not stay any longer, lit the cloth strips that were blocked at the mouth of 2 wine bottles. He threw the 2 ignited combustion bottles back and forth into his mother's room. Due to the curtains being pulled in my mother's room, the first combustion bottle shattered the glass on the window. Due to the obstruction of curtains in the room, it shattered on the windowsill. The scattered flames instantly ignited the curtains in the room. The curtains ignited by flames immediately made the second combustion bottle thrown by Gu Yuchen lose any obstruction. He flew straight into the room and crashed into the wardrobe on the side of his mother's bed. Accompanied by the shattering of the wine bottle, flames splattered out. While igniting the wardrobe, also ignite the bed on one side. Gu Yuchen, who didn't have time to watch the spread of the fire in the room, took a quick glance. With a low roar, dozens of zombies rushed from afar. Quickly walked to the last 2 bottles and placed them in front of the Molotov cocktail outside the window of their own hall. Hurriedly picking up these last 2 bottles of Molotov cocktails, Gu Yuchen proceeded to make them the same way. After lighting 2 bottles of Molotov cocktails, throw them on the French window of the hall one by one. Because the French window in the hall is also closed behind the curtains, the first combustion bottle to break the French window in the hall also happened, and it broke the glass in the mother's room. But when the combustion bottle fell to the ground, the splattering flames ignited the curtains. The second combustion bottle directly ignited a shelf filled with food in the lobby. It's strange to say that Gu Yuchen made such a big noise in the backyard. Unexpectedly, it did not catch the attention of Zhang Heng and Li Mengya in their sister's room. I think the 2 of them, who are deeply in love at this moment, have no time to care about the outside world, right? Okay, then let me use my actions to witness how passionate your love for this dog man and woman is. Subsequently, seeing dozens of zombies running from around, getting closer and closer to their position, Gu Yuchen, who picked up the shovel he had left in the backyard before, hurriedly climbed over the iron fence on one side and ran in the direction of his arrival. Gu Yuchen, who had climbed over the iron fence, had not yet taken a few steps. A sturdy body with crimson eyes. The Alaskan sled dog, with its internal organs and other objects hanging on one side of its rib, suddenly rushed out from the front corner. Looking ahead at the suddenly running Alaskan sled dog rushing towards him, Gu Yuchen, running, immediately blurted out with a panicked expression. Sleeping slot. Chapter 9. Brother, you think too much. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Sleeping slot. Gu Yuchen, running under the rain curtain, just blurted out a panicked, lying trough sentence. The Alaskan sled zombie dog that rushed out from the corner had already rushed towards Gu Yuchen. The thick hind legs of the 2 bulls kicked vigorously on the ground. Immediately, it opened its jagged mouth and rushed towards Gu Yuchen. While running, Gu Yuchen, who was panicked, didn't have time to think much. Close your eyes and swing the shovel in your hand. Then he vigorously patted the Alaskan zombie dog that was flying towards him. As for the shovel that he swung, can he hit the zombie dog that was coming at him? In fact, Gu Yuchen, who closed his eyes and wielded the shovel at random, didn't know it in his heart. At that time, there was only one thought in his mind, which was that he had to use all his strength to hit the head of this zombie dog. Otherwise, I will definitely become fresh dog food for this zombie dog. Thinking so, Gu Yuchen closed his eyes and waved the shovel carelessly. Directly slapped the head of the shovel on the shoulder blade at the end of the right neck of the leaping zombie dog. At the moment when the head of the shovel contacted the zombie dog, Gu Yuchen swung the shovel hard and immediately folded it into 2 sections from the middle of the spade pole. At the same time, a crisp sound of broken bones was immediately heard from the zombie dog. With a click sound, the sound of bones breaking began. The zombie dog leaped up and was hit hard. Lost balance in the air and fell heavily to the ground. The zombie dog that fell to the ground struggled to get up. But the broken right scapula only affected its massive body shape. In the struggle, I stumbled and stumbled, looking very comical. Gu Yuchen, who was holding half a shovel pole in his hand, did not dare to stay after seeing the fallen zombie dog unable to get up for a while. After hurriedly bypassing the struggling zombie dog on the ground, he ran again towards the direction he had come. However, it was also at this time. A scream from Li Mengya came from behind in her own room. Ah! Ah Heng, it's on fire. Come and put out the fire. Ah Heng, come and put out the fire quickly. As Li Mengya's screams rang out, the curses and curses of his good brother Zhang Heng immediately spread from inside the house. Sleeping slot. It must be Gu Yuchen, it must be Gu Yuchen doing it. Gu Yuchen, Wachao and I. Zhang Heng, who was not waiting for his angry tone, shouted out the curses in his mouth. His voice was immediately overshadowed by Li Menya's screams. Ah Heng, the house next door is also on fire. The backyard is full of zombies, what should we do? Ah Heng, come up with a solution quickly. Ah Heng. After hearing the screams of Zhang Heng and Li Menya, a couple of dogs, coming from behind. Gu Yuchen, running, instinctively turned his head and looked behind him. In the direction of their own backyard behind them, those zombies who had heard the sound and ran from all around. Already attracted by the flames burning in Wang Bo's and his own room, they all gathered outside the iron fence in the backyards of the two families. Under the gathering of corpses, several zombies have climbed over into the backyard. Standing in front of the brightly lit window, he stretched out his arms and grabbed towards the room. As dozens of zombies gathered in the backyard, they let out low growls. More zombies lured by the low growls of their companions are also running towards this place from afar with their low growls. Gu Yuchen, who turned his head to see this scene, couldn't help but burst into a cold laugh in his heart. Oh, dog thing, I treat you like a brother. How dare you come to pit me for such a little food? Aren't you two trying to take over my house? I'll give it to you guys. I not only give you home and food, but also give you a freely made barbecue. Let you dog men and women save even Temio's urn. Humph. The escape route has been cut off by me for you. I have ordered your house and food as a gift. There is still a group of zombies at the front door, rushing to witness your passionate love blocking the door. I don't believe it, can you two dog men and women still survive and leave this community? When the great revenge is avenged, it is difficult to conceal the joy in Gu Yuchen's heart. Returning to my own van with rain all over my body. Gu Yuyao, the younger sister responsible for keeping watch for him, was curled up in the middle row seat, sobbing softly. After hearing the sound of my brother Gu Yuchen rushing into the car. Gu Yuyao, curled up in the middle seat and sobbing, looked up at her brother who had just sat in the driver's seat and said with a crying voice. Brother, did you just see that big dog? You weren't bitten by it, were you? I saw its organs hanging from its body and ran towards you. I thought it would eat you. After hearing the words spoken by my sister behind me. Gu Yuchen, who turned his head to look at his younger sister, felt an indescribable heartache as he saw the tears rolling on her face. It seems that my younger sister is still worried about herself. Although there is a rift between their siblings due to their mother's affairs. But after all, they are siblings of the same milk siblings, and the familial bond between them will never change. Looking at his tearful sister in front of him, Gu Yuchen felt heartbroken. Quickly showing a smile at the corner of his mouth, he spoke to his sister with great indulgence. Xiaoyao, are you worried about your brother? Don't worry, that zombie dog has already been taken care of by my brother. Brother, I am very skilled, how could I be bitten by a zombie dog? Brother, I promise you that in the future, he will never let you or worry about me anymore. He will never let you or worry about me again. Gu Yuchen, who had not yet been spoiled by his expression, finished his words. Gu Yuyao, sitting in the middle row seat, wiped the tears on her cheeks with her hand. He glanced at his brother in front of him with a disdainful expression and said. Brother, you're overthinking. How could I possibly worry about you? You remember, the revenge of killing your mother is unforgettable. I'm crying here just because I feel like you're going to be eaten by that big dog. What should I do if you're eaten? The food in this car will eventually be eaten by me. After that. Without your protection, there is only a dead end waiting for me. Looking at his sister's serious expression, Gu Yuchen, who learned the truth, suddenly felt extremely embarrassed. Sorry to bother you, I don't deserve it. Just as Gu Yuchen, with an awkward expression, uttered a self-deprecating remark with a hint of bitter laughter in his heart. Sitting upright in the middle row seat, Gu Yuyao stared straight at her brother and spoke with a serious expression. "Brother, when I thought you were dead, I had already planned how to eat the food here so that I could live a few more days. Now that you're back, where are we going next? You've set our house on fire, where are we staying from now on? We can't just stay in this car all the time, can we? Come on, don't be polite. Tell me about your next plan." Reaching out his hand on his sister's chubby little face, he gently pinched it. Sitting upright in the driver's seat, Gu Yuchen started the car with the key. As he passed through the rearview mirror, he looked at his sister behind him and smiled lightly. Plan. Our current plan is very simple. Firstly, we need to leave here in the city where we are located. Believe me, there must be many zombies in the city. So, we also need to stay away from all cities in the future. Next, let's drive directly to the countryside. It's best to go to a mountain village. I don't think there should be too many zombies there. Speaking. Gu Yuchen, who was driving the van, slowly backed the van out of the parking space and drove towards the entrance of the community. Chapter 10. Goodbye my home. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the slightly reduced rain curtain, there was a loud bang. The barrier railing that fell at the entrance of the community gate was accidentally hit by a silver-white van driven by Gu Yuchen and scattered to the ground. As Gu Yuchen drove his van out of the entrance of the community, a large group of zombies with teeth and claws also rushed out of the courtyard. Gu Yuchen didn't pay any attention to the zombies and zombie dogs chasing behind the car in the rear. Even if these guys are not tired, even if they have strong willpower. But so what? How can a group of guys who can only run on their legs catch up with this four-wheeled car? At this moment, Gu Yuchen, who was driving the car, was grateful to his mother in his heart. If it weren't for my mother forcing me to get a driver's license and learn how to drive when I was 18 years old. So at this moment, he really can't imagine. What will happen to oneself who doesn't know how to drive at this moment? And when the car drove onto the main road of the city, Gu Yuchen was driving the car. This is when I truly understand the appearance of the world outside the community. A city, a second-tier small city located in the north of Z country. A city he lived in for 20 years, a city that became a mess after a sudden outbreak of the zombie virus. Thick smoke billowed in several buildings in the distance. The straight black smoke surged into the clouds. On the originally wide and straight road, different vehicles are parked in various directions. Crimson bloodstains and severed limbs were almost ubiquitous in every car. The massive city bus somehow rushed into the shops on both sides of the street. The passengers in the car crowded together, sharing each other's flesh and blood. Occasionally, several figures will suddenly appear from the parked cars on the road and from the shops on both sides of the road. They let out a chilling low roar in their mouths, waving their hands. I joined the group of corpses chasing after the van at all costs. The once bustling city now appears particularly quiet and noisy. I can't see the stillness of living people, and the noise is filled with zombies roaring low. Fortunately, among these irregularly parked cars on the road, there are gaps that allow vans to slowly pass through in twists and turns. Fortunately, as the van passed through these gaps, these vehicles parked haphazardly on the road delayed the zombies chasing behind them. Otherwise, their van, which slowly shuttles through the cracks, will definitely be caught up by the zombies chasing behind it. If that were the case, it would definitely not be a beautiful scene. After slowly driving through the various vehicles stretching for miles, Gu Yuchen drove his van and entered a relatively open road section. At this moment, Gu Yuchen, who had no worries about this city anymore, couldn't help but step on the accelerator. Suddenly increase the speed of the car and drive towards the southern suburbs of a city. Goodbye Mom, goodbye to my home. At this moment, Gu Yuchen, who was driving a car and leaving a city with his sister Gu Yuyao, still didn't know. Not long after he drove and crashed into the barrier of the community gate, leading a large group of zombies to escape the community. In his home, he was engulfed in smoke and fire for a while, and saw Zhang Heng and Li Mengya, who had no hope of extinguishing the fire. Then they immediately removed the heavy object blocked behind the front door and fled out of the community together. Due to Gu Yuchen, who had previously fled by car, leading away most of the zombies on the roads outside the community were still relatively quiet and safe. Zhang Heng and Li Mengya, who hurriedly escaped from the community, did not see any signs of zombies on the roads outside the community. Zhang Heng, holding a kitchen knife in his hand and filled with resentment towards Gu Yuchen in his heart. Walking in the rain, he cursed Gu Yuchen from his mouth. He meows, "Damn Gu Yuchen, he sleeps in Nima. You dare to burn down the house, you really don't want to leave us a way out, do you? Damn it. If I had known, I shouldn't have been soft-hearted at that time. I should have killed you bastard." Gu Yuchen, lying in bed. Speaking. Zhang Heng, who cursed Gu Yuchen incessantly, lifted his leg and kicked a small stone under his feet as if venting his anger. Walking beside Zhang Heng, Li Mengya, whose clothes had already been soaked by the rain. At this moment, I also felt a little annoyed by the curses that Zhang Heng was cursing on the side. As a former high school flower, Li Mengya naturally performs well in today's university. If it weren't for Zhang Heng's parents, they would all be executives from a state-owned enterprise in a city. If it is helpful for Li Mengya, who will graduate from university 2 years later, in her job search. How could Li Mengya, who has a proud heart, possibly fall in love with a gnawing old man like Zhang Heng who dropped out of high school and left home unemployed? When it comes to falling into such a situation, everyone blames Zhang Heng, this useless person. If it weren't for this useless person, taking advantage of the gap when his parents are not at home on a business trip to deceive himself into coming to his home to see them, I wouldn't have had a sudden fever with this useless person at his house. If I didn't have a fever with this useless person at his house, I wouldn't have had to endure hunger with this useless person at home for 5 days after the zombie suddenly appeared. If it weren't for this useless person's softness and not killing Gu Yuchen at that time, how could she possibly? Li Mengya, who became increasingly angry as she thought about it, immediately shouted at Zhang Heng with disgust after he kicked the small stone under his feet. "Alright, shut up. I've been cursing all the way. Are you bothering me? Can't you be quiet? Think about it yourself. Have you been taking good care of me these days? You are just one of them." The word waste that was about to be uttered was immediately swallowed by Li Mengya, who realized something. At this moment, Li Mengya suddenly realized. Now, I can only rely on Zhang Heng in front of me to survive in this zombie-infested world. If I had a strained relationship with Zhang Heng at this time, the self left behind by Zhang Heng has only a dead end. At this moment, I don't have to think about it, but I know that my parents who live in the western district of a city may have already passed away. Homelessness and no one to rely on to take care of oneself, now can only rely on Zhang Heng, this useless love brain. Even if you treat this waste as a temporary disposable item to block zombies for yourself. Li Mengya forcefully swallowed the word waste in her mouth, then squeezed out a smile on her face, replacing her previous expression of disgust. Facing him with a hint of anger in his tone, Zhang Heng quickly showed a pleasing expression on his face when he saw that he was angry, and explained. "Sorry Ah Heng, I didn't mean to get angry with you on purpose. We just don't have a place to go now, and you're just cursing that bastard Gu Yuchen. Seeing you doesn't even think about what we should do next, it just makes me feel a bit angry. Don't you know? I and the child in my belly are now counting on." Li Mengya, who was not waiting for a tone of anger, finished speaking. One crawled out of nowhere, with a large hole in its abdomen. The body was soaked in rain, and the white-haired old man with crimson eyes was a zombie. Immediately, with a low roar, they rushed towards the two walking on the road. Roar. Upon hearing the low roar of the elderly zombie, Zhang Heng quickly pulled the frightened Li Mengya behind him. Holding the kitchen knife in his hand, he stood in front of Li Mengya. Facing the elderly zombies rushing towards him, Zhang Heng, as a man, did not hesitate. The old man's zombie with a low roar had just rushed towards Zhang Heng. Zhang Heng, who was blocking Li Mengya, lifted his leg and kicked on the chest of the old man's zombie. The elderly zombie who kicked out and ran towards him was immediately kicked to the ground by Zhang Heng. Just as Zhang Heng, holding a kitchen knife in his hand, was about to come forward and take care of this old guy who didn't have long eyes. Several zombies led by the low roar of the elderly zombies appeared in the sight of the two. And in front of these zombies was a plump, wound-covered golden retriever with crimson eyes. Li Mengya, who was blocked by Zhang Heng behind her, immediately became distracted when she saw this scene. Just as she was about to leave Zhang Heng in front of her and escape alone. I just saw a private car parked not far away with the driver's door open. In a panic, Li Mengya didn't even want to remind Zhang Heng and ran towards the private car not far away. But Zhang Heng, who didn't know that Li Mengya had abandoned him behind the scenes, saw the zombies and zombie dogs running from afar. Foolishly comforted Li Mengya, who had already run away from behind, in a gentle tone. Xiaoya, don't be afraid, I will definitely protect you and... Before Zhang Heng, who was completely unaware, could finish speaking, a roar came from behind, coming from the car engine. Zhang Heng, who seemed to have noticed something in an instant, quickly turned around with an incredulous expression and looked behind him. Just as he turned around, he saw Li Mengya, who had been deeply in love with him not long ago. Driving a black private car, he abandoned him without looking back. Seeing this scene, Zhang Heng had not yet had time to transform his incredible expression into endless anger. The old man's corpse, which had been kicked to the ground by him before, quietly climbed up behind him. Leapt and pounced on his back, biting into his neck. Zhang Heng, who was bitten by an elderly zombie on his neck, had just fallen to the ground with a painful expression on his face. The golden-haired zombie dog that rushed towards him then opened its jagged jaws and bit onto his abdomen.